The Amazon jungle hides its secrets well. For decades, the dense canopy has concealed what explorers have sought for centuries. Dr. Samuel Grant knew this better than most. Once respected in academic circles, he now faced ridicule, bankruptcy, and a damaged relationship with his young son Eli. This expedition was his final chance, not just for redemption, but for survival. What began as a desperate gamble changed forever when Eli's small hand brushed away soil from an ancient stone door deep in the uncharted wilderness. Inside lay treasures beyond imagination, gold artifacts worth millions, untouched for 1,000 years. But why had no one found this vault before? What happened to those who might have tried? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. A sea of red ink drowned Samuel's research paper. Harsh comments crowded the margins like angry vultures. Speculative, unsubstantiated, embarrassing. He stared at the paper in his trembling hands, then at the eviction notice on his kitchen counter. Both represented failure. Samuel's apartment told the story of his downfall. Books stacked precariously on every surface, maps curled against walls, unpaid bills fanned across his desk like a losing poker hand. A framed photo lay face down, himself in happier times, receiving the Berkeley Archaeological Achievement Award. "Dad, there's nothing to eat," Samuel startled. He'd almost forgotten Eli was visiting. His son stood in the doorway, thin arms crossed, eyes judging the chaos. "I'll order something," Samuel replied, quickly hiding the eviction notice under a book. "Mom says you should buy groceries instead of takeout." Samuel sighed. "Your mother has opinions about a lot of things. She says you're wasting money chasing fairy tales." The words stung because they echoed the university board that had stripped him of tenure. Just because something hasn't been found doesn't make it a fairy tale, Eli. His phone rang, his ex-wife, right on cue. Samuel braced himself. "Linda, I know he's due back tonight. I'll have him packed." He listened, wincing. "Yes, I remember his science project is due Monday." "No, I haven't forgotten." Eli wandered to the window, pretending not to listen. Samuel ended the call and ran his hand through graying hair. 5 years ago, he'd been the department's rising star. Now he was the cautionary tale professors whispered about. All because he'd presented evidence of an advanced civilization in the Amazon that predated conventional timelines. His theories might have survived academic skepticism, but not the fabricated evidence planted in his research by someone he'd once called friend. By the time the falsification was traced to Dr. Victor Reyes, the damage was done. Samuel's reputation was ruined, his marriage collapsed, and his relationship with his son reduced to court-mandated weekends. "Eli, come here. I want to show you something." The boy approached cautiously. Samuel opened a worn leather journal. This belonged to Professor Marquez, my mentor. He passed away last month, the one with the cool stories about headhunters. Samuel smiled. "The very same. I've been going through his field notes and found something incredible." He carefully unfolded a fragile, partially burned map. Yellowed with age, its edges charred black, but the central portion remained intact, a detailed rendering of an unexplored Amazon region, marked Terra Silenciosa. "What does that mean?" Eli asked, curiosity momentarily overcoming his practiced indifference. "The Silent Land. It's a place no modern explorer has successfully documented. Professor Marquez spent decades piecing together references to it. Why is it silent?" Samuel's finger traced the faded boundary lines. "Legend says those who enter never return to speak of what they found." Sounds dangerous. All great discoveries come with risk, son. But Marquez left coordinates, notes about landmarks. He was planning an expedition before his heart gave out. Samuel hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I'm going to finish what he started." Eli's eyes widened. "You're going to the Amazon?" "Went 2 weeks. I've secured minimal funding, just enough for a guide and basic supplies. Does Mom know?" "Not yet." Samuel knelt to meet his son's eyes. "Eli, this could change everything. If I find proof of what's described in these notes, it would validate my research. We could have a fresh start. The boy studied the map, then his father's face. What if you find nothing? The question revealed wisdom beyond Eli's 12 years. Then I'll know for certain. Either way, I'll have answers. Samuel didn't mention the university's final warning, bring back substantial evidence, or surrender his remaining academic credentials. He didn't mention the maxed-out credit cards or the loans from questionable sources. This expedition wasn't just about redemption, it was survival. I wish I could go, Eli said softly, surprising Samuel. Your mother would never allow it. Besides, it's no place for a kid. Eli's face hardened. You always do that. I'm not a baby. Samuel studied his son. Despite their strained relationship, Eli had inherited his curiosity, his stubbornness. And Samuel had missed so much already. Baseball games, school plays, everyday moments lost to academic obsession. A wild thought formed. What if he took Eli along? The boys' summer break was coming. With proper precautions, the journey to the outskirts of Terra Silenciosa could be educational. They would stay at the safe base camp, while Samuel ventured deeper with the guide. It was reckless, irresponsible. Linda would fight it with every legal weapon, yet as father and son bent over the ancient map together, Samuel glimpsed something he hadn't seen in years, a bridge across the chasm between them. Maybe, Samuel said carefully. We should discuss the possibility. Eli looked up, eyes bright with a hope that terrified and exhilarated Samuel in equal measure. Really? You'd take me? It would be challenging, possibly dangerous. I'm not afraid. Samuel rested his hand on his son's shoulder. That's what worries me. Outside the apartment window, rain began to fall, washing the city grime from the glass. Beyond lay uncertainty, danger, and the faintest glimmer of redemption, not just for his career, but for something far more precious. The leather compass case was worn smooth by decades of handling, its brass clasp tarnished but functional. Samuel's grandfather had carried it through 2 wars before passing it to him on his 12th birthday, the same age Eli was now. This is your responsibility now, Samuel said, placing it in Eli's palm. Every explorer needs reliable navigation. Eli turned the antique compass over, studying the engraved initials. Does Mom know I'm going? Samuel zipped another duffel bag closed. She does now. The resulting argument had been nuclear. Linda had threatened court orders, custody revisions, even calling child services. Samuel had countered with educational value, father-son bonding, and professional guides ensuring safety. What finally swayed her wasn't his arguments, but Eli's uncharacteristic passion. The boy who barely spoke at family dinners had suddenly become eloquent, pleading for this chance. She's still mad, Eli said, testing the compass needle. She's concerned, Samuel corrected. With good reason. He surveyed their equipment spread across his living room floor. Most was second-hand, purchased from pawn shops or borrowed from reluctant former colleagues. His academic disgrace had reduced his expedition budget to almost nothing. Samuel had sold his rare book collection, his mother's silver, even his wedding ring. The funds had secured 2 plane tickets to Brazil, hired a guide named Mateo Rodriguez, and purchased essential supplies. Anything else would have to be acquired in Manaus, their last stop before entering the jungle. Will we see jaguars? Eli asked, excitement overcoming his usual reserve. Possibly, from a distance. They typically avoid humans. Anacondas? Let's hope not too closely. Samuel checked items off his list. Water purification tablets, anti-malarial medication, lightweight hammocks with mosquito netting. He'd spent hours researching what they'd need versus what they could afford. The gap was concerning. His phone vibrated with a text message. Victor, heard you're chasing ghosts in the Amazon. Taking your kid? Desperate much. Samuel's jaw tightened. Victor Reyes, once his research partner, now his nemesis, somehow always knew his movements. The man who had planted false evidence in Samuel's research, then discovered it and reported him, continued to haunt his professional life. Eli looked up from the compass. Dad, you okay? Samuel forced a smile. Fine, just a reminder about our flight. He didn't share his suspicion that Victor was monitoring the expedition. The Terra Silenciosa research had originally been their joint project, before Samuel had continued alone, finding connections Victor had missed. If Samuel's theories proved correct, Victor would want to be there, or ensure Samuel never returned with evidence. "We leave tomorrow," Samuel said, changing the subject. "Early, last chance to back out." Eli slipped the compass into his pocket. "No way!" Samuel studied his son, this mystery he'd helped create but barely knew. Linda had shaped Eli's daily life for years, while Samuel chased academic acclaim. Now the boy was a serious, watchful, almost teenager, with his mother's analytical mind and Samuel's stubborn chin. "You should call her," Samuel said. "Tell her good night." While Eli spoke quietly to his mother, Samuel examined the copy he'd made of Professor Marquez's map. The original was too fragile to bring, but he'd digitally enhanced the image, revealing details that had initially escaped notice, tiny symbols marking potential dangers, notations about river currents, and strange pictographs near the center of Terra Silenciosa. Marquez had spent decades collecting fragments of evidence about the region, interviewing indigenous elders, and cross-referencing colonial records. The old professor had been convinced that Terra Silenciosa contained ruins of a pre-Columbian civilization far more advanced than conventional archaeology acknowledged. The same theory that had destroyed Samuel's career. "Mom wants to talk to you," Eli said, holding out the phone. Samuel braced himself. "Linda, if anything happens to him, Samuel, I will never forgive you." Her voice was tight, controlled. "I would never forgive myself either. Your satellite phone. Test it daily. I expect check-ins." "Of course." A pause. "He's excited. I haven't seen him this animated in years." Samuel swallowed the lump in his throat. "I'll keep him safe. See that you do." Another pause. "And Samuel, be careful." The call ended. Samuel stared at the phone, surprised by the hint of concern for him beneath her worry for their son. Eli stood by the window, watching the city lights. Samuel joined him, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Big day tomorrow." Eli nodded. "What if we actually find it, Dad?" "The silent place?" Samuel considered his answer carefully. "Then we document everything, bring back evidence, and history gets rewritten. And if we don't, then we had an adventure together. Either way, we win." Outside, beyond the urban glow, beyond the Atlantic, beyond the winding Amazon, Terra Silenciosa waited, silent, ancient, undisturbed. For now, the photograph was faded and dog-eared, showing a bearded man standing proudly beside a massive ceiba tree. Behind him loomed the shadowy entrance to the Amazon jungle. A single sentence was scrawled across the bottom. "The gateway awaits, but few return." "That's Professor Marquez?" Eli asked, studying the image Samuel had just shown him. 30 years ago, on his first expedition to this region," Samuel confirmed, returning the photo to his waterproof pouch. This was as far as he got before his team refused to continue. They stood at the edge of Manaus, the last major city before the wilderness. The humid air pressed against them like a wet blanket, carrying scents of diesel, spices, and the earthy musk of the nearby river. Their guide, Mateo Rodriguez, was haggling with a weathered boat owner 50 yards away, gesturing emphatically. "What made them turn back?" Eli asked, swatting at a mosquito. Samuel hesitated. "Superstition, mostly. Local legends about Terra Silenciosa frightened them." "What legends?" Before Samuel could answer, Mateo approached, his expression grim beneath his worn baseball cap. "We have a boat," he announced in accented English. "But I must warn you again, Dr. Grant. Where you want to go, it is not good place. The people who know the river, they avoid this area." Samuel had expected resistance. "Your concerns are noted, Mr. Rodriguez, but our agreement stands." Mateo shrugged. "Your money, your risk." He glanced at Eli. "The boy should stay in Manaus." "My son stays with me." Eli straightened, trying to look older than his 12 years. Mateo muttered something in Portuguese, then gestured toward the dock. "We leave in 1 hour. After that, no stopping until nightfall." As Mateo walked away, Eli whispered, "He's scared." "He's cautious," Samuel corrected. Good quality in a guide, but we're still going, right? Absolutely. An hour later, they were skimming upriver in a battered aluminum boat with a temperamental outboard motor. The city receded behind them, replaced by increasingly dense foliage. Eli trailed his fingers in the coffee-colored water until Samuel gently pulled his hand back. Piranhas, he explained. And worse. Worse? Electric eels. Gandiru fish. Caiman. Eli's eyes widened. But Samuel noted with pride that his son showed interest rather than fear. The journey continued through the day, the river narrowing as they followed tributaries into less traveled waters. Monkeys chattered in the canopy overhead. Brilliantly colored birds took flight as they passed. Once, a massive anaconda slid from a low-hanging branch into the water, causing Matteo to cross himself hurriedly. By late afternoon, the familiar landmarks from tourist maps had disappeared. Matteo navigated by instinct and occasional glances at Samuel's coordinates. As sunlight began to fade, he guided the boat toward a small clearing on the riverbank. "We camp here tonight," he announced. "How much farther to the region marked on my map?" Samuel asked, helping unload supplies. Matteo pointed upstream. 2 days, maybe 3. After tomorrow, the river gets tricky. Shallow in places, rapids in others. Not many come this way. While Eli helped set up their tent, Samuel took GPS readings and compared them to his enhanced copy of Marquez's map. They were making good progress, but the true challenge would begin when they left the river and continued on foot. As darkness fell, the jungle transformed. Daytime sounds gave way to an entirely different symphony. Rustling leaves, distant howls, the constant drone of insects. Matteo built a small fire and prepared a simple meal of beans, rice, and dried fish. "Tell us about Terra Silenciosa," Samuel said as they ate. Matteo's face tightened. "Old stories say it is where the forest keeps its secrets. Some tribes believe powerful spirits guard treasures there." "What kind of treasures?" Eli asked eagerly. "Gold, maybe. Knowledge, maybe. Death, certainly." Matteo stirred the fire. "Those who enter disturb the guardians." "What guardians?" Eli pressed. Matteo made a vague gesture. "The tribes have different names. Some say they are the souls of warriors. Others say creatures not human, not animal. All agree they protect something valuable." Samuel kept his expression neutral, but excitement surged through him. Matteo's stories aligned with fragmentary accounts Marquez had collected, consistent mythology across different tribes, suggesting a foundation in reality. "Tomorrow we continue upriver," Samuel said, redirecting the conversation. "Eli, you should get some sleep." Later, as Eli slept in their tent, Samuel studied the photograph of Marquez again. His mentor had come this far but turned back. What had he sensed? What had he feared? The jungle whispered around them, ancient and patient. Samuel tucked the photo away, feeling both insignificant and determined beneath the vastness of the star-filled sky. Tomorrow they would venture deeper, following the path of the river and the breadcrumbs of legend, toward a place where silence reigned and secrets waited. The river narrowed until branches from opposite banks nearly touched overhead, creating a verdant tunnel. 3 days into their journey, the familiar Amazon had transformed into something primeval. Eli pointed to a break in the vegetation. "Dad, look." Samuel signaled Matteo to slow the boat. At the water's edge stood a weathered wooden totem, a carved serpent wrapped around a humanoid figure, its features eroded by decades of rain and humidity. Moss clung to its surface, but the craftsmanship remained evident. "We should stop," Samuel said. Matteo shook his head firmly. "Bad sign. Boundary marker." "Boundary to what?" Eli asked. "To where we should not go." Samuel studied the totem through binoculars. "This matches descriptions in Marquez's notes. We're on the right track." Reluctantly, Matteo steered toward the bank. The moment they touched shore, the jungle fell silent. No birds, no monkeys, only the gentle lapping of water against the boat. "You hear that?" Matteo whispered. "The animals know." Samuel approached the totem, camera ready. Up close, the carving revealed unexpected details, geometric patterns incongruous with traditional indigenous art. He photographed it from multiple angles while Eli watched from the boat. "Strange symbols," Samuel murmured. "Pre-Columbian, but unlike anything documented." Matteo remained in the boat, eyes scanning the tree line. "We should not linger." Samuel ran his fingers over the worn wood, feeling a strange vibration beneath his touch. When he withdrew his hand, a sliver of wood came away, revealing metallic glints within the carving. "Metal inlay," he said, excitement rising. "This culture had metallurgy." "Dad," Eli called, voice tight with alarm. Samuel turned. All around them, tree branches swayed, despite the absence of wind. The water's surface rippled in concentric circles around their boat. "Earthquake?" Eli suggested. "No," Matteo said, crossing himself again. "We are being watched." Samuel quickly collected wood samples, soil from around the totem's base, and final photographs before returning to the boat. As they pushed back into the current, he felt a peculiar sensation, like static electricity, raising the hair on his arms. "Did you feel that?" he asked Eli. The boy nodded, eyes wide. Matteo gunned the motor, his knuckles white on the tiller. 2 more hours today, then we stop. Tomorrow we leave the river." Samuel consulted his map. The totem's location aligned perfectly with Marquez's notes, confirming they were on the correct path to Terra Silenciosa. But something bothered him. The sophisticated craftsmanship, the metal inlay. These suggested a level of advancement inconsistent with known Amazonian cultures of that era. By late afternoon, they reached a small tributary where the water turned clear, unlike the sediment-heavy main river. Matteo guided them to a rocky bank beneath a massive kapok tree. "We camp here," he announced. Last safe place. While setting up camp, Eli discovered a small hollow in the tree's base. "Dad, come see!" Inside the hollow lay a weathered leather pouch. Samuel carefully extracted it, conscious of its fragility. Inside was a tarnished silver medallion on a broken chain, clearly not indigenous in origin. "Spanish," Eli suggested, recalling his history lessons. Samuel examined it closely. "Portuguese, I think. 16th century. The medallion bore an intricate engraving of a compass rose, with unusual markings around its circumference. At its center was a depiction of the same serpent-human figure from the totem, an explorer's pendant, Samuel said. "Someone came this way centuries ago and left it behind," Eli added ominously. That night, as they huddled around the fire, Matteo grew increasingly agitated. "Tomorrow we leave the river, yes, but I go no further than 1 day's walk from water," Samuel frowned. "Our agreement has changed," Matteo interrupted. "I will take you to the edge of Terra Silenciosa, but not inside. Double pay for this much. More I will not do." "Why?" Matteo gestured at the dark jungle. "You do not listen. The forest speaks warnings. The silence today, unnatural. The medallion, abandoned by someone who never returned. Those are just, I have wife, children. They need living father, not brave dead one." Samuel couldn't argue with that logic. "Fine, the edge of the region, then I'll continue with Eli. You risk your son?" The question struck deeper than Matteo could know. Samuel glanced at Eli, who was examining the medallion by firelight, tracing its engravings with a careful finger. "We'll be cautious," Samuel said. But doubt had taken root. Later, as Eli slept, Samuel studied the medallion again. Its markings resembled coordinates, primitive but precise. And something about the central figure nagged at him. The serpent wrapped around the human wasn't attacking, it was protecting. In the darkness beyond their camp, leaves rustled without wind. The fire sputtered and dimmed momentarily, as if something had passed between it and the stars. Samuel clutched the medallion, feeling its unfamiliar weight, and wondering what price its previous owner had paid for venturing where they were about to go. Morning brought a dense, clinging mist that obscured everything beyond 20 feet. They abandoned the boat, concealing it beneath foliage, and began the trek inland. Matteo led with a machete, hacking through undergrowth where no path existed. The humidity was suffocating, turning every breath into an effort. "Stay close," Samuel told Eli. "Watch for snakes." The boy nodded, eyes constantly scanning the ground. His initial excitement had matured into focused alertness. a transformation that both worried and impressed Samuel. By midday, the terrain grew steeper. The jungle thinned slightly as they ascended, but strange flora began to appear. Flowers with impossibly vivid colors, fungi that seemed to pulse with inner light, vines that grew in perfect geometric patterns. Not natural, Matteo muttered, avoiding contact with the unusual plants, or very old evolutionary adaptations, Samuel countered. Though his scientific certainty was eroding with each strange discovery, Eli pointed ahead. What's that? Through a break in the vegetation loomed a stone structure, a crumbling archway half reclaimed by the jungle. Excitement surged through Samuel. The first concrete evidence of construction. As they approached, he noted the precision of the stonework. Massive blocks fitted without mortar, edges still sharp despite centuries of exposure. The archway was carved with unfamiliar glyphs, similar to those on the medallion but more elaborate. Proto-writing, Samuel breathed, photographing everything. This predates any known Amazonian civilization. Matteo refused to pass beneath the arch. This is where I stop. We haven't reached the coordinates yet, Samuel protested. This is boundary. Beyond is Terra Silenciosa. Matteo crossed himself. I wait 3 days. If you not return, I go for help. Samuel wanted to argue, but saw the fear in the guide's eyes. 3 days. Fair enough. Matteo handed Samuel a satellite phone. For emergency. May not work deeper in. After establishing a base camp for Matteo, Samuel prepared to continue with Eli. He hesitated. The reality of what they were doing suddenly overwhelming. Eli, you could stay with Matteo. The boy shook his head firmly. I'm coming with you. It could be dangerous. You need me, Eli said simply. 2 sets of eyes are better. Samuel couldn't argue with his son's logic or his courage. They gathered essential supplies into 2 backpacks, leaving their tent and excess equipment with Matteo. Before passing beneath the stone arch, Samuel took detailed notes of the symbols, comparing them to his digital copies of Marquez's research. Many matched the professor's rubbings from artifacts found hundreds of miles away, suggesting a widespread cultural influence. Ready? He asked Eli. The boy nodded, adjusting his backpack straps. They stepped through the archway together. The change was immediate and unsettling, a drop in temperature, a shift in the quality of light, and most noticeably, a profound silence. Even the constant background buzz of insects vanished. Terra Silenciosa, Samuel whispered. The silent land. They followed a faint depression in the ground that might once have been a path. The vegetation here was different. Larger leaves, stranger formations. Twice they spotted stone markers similar to the archway, but smaller like waypoints. An hour into their exploration, Eli stopped abruptly. Dad, look! Nestled between massive tree roots lay a strange object, a stone cylinder about the size of a water bottle, capped at both ends with what appeared to be tarnished copper. Samuel carefully extracted it from its resting place. Some kind of container, he murmured, turning it over. The cylinder was etched with symbols matching those on the archway. One end had a complex mechanism, like a combination lock with rotating rings. Can you open it? Eli asked. Samuel examined it closely, not without potentially damaging it. This needs proper laboratory equipment. He photographed it from every angle, then carefully placed it in his pack. As he did, he noticed something disturbing. The cylinder was warm to the touch, as if recently handled. They continued deeper into the increasingly strange landscape. Plants grew in patterns too regular to be natural. Stone markers became more frequent, some topped with carved animal heads, jaguars, serpents, and creatures Samuel couldn't identify. Late afternoon brought them to a small clearing, where the trees formed a perfect circle. At its center stood a stone pedestal. Samuel approached cautiously, aware of Eli close behind. The pedestal held a shallow basin filled with clear water. When Samuel peered into it, he gasped. The water showed not his reflection, but an aerial view of the jungle, like a living map. Eli, this is incredible, he whispered. The boy joined him, eyes widening as he looked into the basin. It's showing us where we are. Indeed, tiny ripples in the water marked their exact location. Other ripples indicated features they'd passed, the archway, the markers, the river behind them. Some kind of ancient technology, Samuel said, though the words felt inadequate. Or magic, Eli suggested. Samuel didn't correct him. Science seemed insufficient to explain what they were seeing. As they watched, new ripples formed ahead of them, marking a path deeper into Terra Silenciosa, and something else, larger ripples, moving toward their position from multiple directions. "What are those?" Eli asked, voice tight. Samuel stared at the water map, a chill running down his spine. "I think," he said carefully, "we're not alone here anymore." They fled from the water basin, following the path it had revealed before the approaching ripples could reach them. The jungle grew denser, darker, as if intentionally hindering their progress. Twisted roots seemed to rise from nowhere. Vines descended in their path, and the very air thickened with mist. "Dad, slow down," Eli gasped. Struggling to keep pace, Samuel forced himself to stop, heart hammering. "Sorry, I know." Eli didn't need elaboration. The water map's implications were clear. Something was tracking them. They found shelter beneath a massive fallen tree, its hollow trunk creating a natural hideaway. As darkness fell, Samuel rigged a minimal camp, just sleeping bags and a small LED lantern. A fire seemed too revealing. "What do you think was coming toward us?" Eli whispered, huddled close. "Animals, maybe. Jaguars or other predators." The ripples moved with purpose. Eli wasn't accepting the comforting lie. Like they were searching, Samuel couldn't argue. The precision of those movements had been unnerving, coordinated, intelligent. He checked his satellite phone. No signal. They were truly alone now. Sleep came fitfully. Twice, Samuel woke to unusual sounds. Not animals or insects, but something between a whisper and a hum, emanating from everywhere and nowhere. Beside him, Eli twitched in troubled dreams. Dawn brought heavy rain that drummed against leaves and turned the ground to mud. They ate energy bars in silence, conserving their limited supplies. "We should head back," Samuel said reluctantly. "Get more equipment, maybe convince Mateo." "Look." Eli pointed beyond their shelter. 20 yards away stood a stone pillar they hadn't noticed in yesterday's rush. The rain streamed down its carved surface, activating something within the stone, a faint blue luminescence that traced the etched symbols. "Bioluminescent organisms activated by water," Samuel suggested, but his scientific explanations were becoming hollow, even to his own ears. They approached cautiously. The pillar stood 8 feet tall, its surface covered in the now familiar glyphs. Near its base, a small niche had been carved. Inside, which sat a peculiar object, a finger-sized crystal shard, completely dry despite the downpour. Samuel reached for it hesitantly. "Careful," Eli warned. The moment Samuel touched the crystal, a jolt ran up his arm. Not painful, but intense, like static electricity multiplied tenfold. He nearly dropped it in surprise. "What happened?" Eli asked, alarmed. "It's vibrating." Samuel held it up. The crystal pulsed with inner light that matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. As he studied it, Samuel noticed something extraordinary. The rain was no longer falling on them, though it continued all around. A perfect dry circle surrounded them and the pillar. "That's impossible," he breathed. Eli looked up in wonder. "The crystal's doing it?" Before Samuel could respond, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Not an earthquake. Something more localized, more deliberate. A fissure opened in the earth 10 yards away, releasing a cloud of vapor that smelled of minerals and age. "Run!" Samuel grabbed Eli's hand. They sprinted away from the widening crack, the crystal clutched in Samuel's fist. With each step, the forest around them seemed to shift. Trees bending away, paths appearing where none had been before. "It's leading us!" Eli shouted above the rain. The crystal pulsed brighter, almost painfully hot now. Samuel wanted to drop it, but couldn't bring himself to release it. Its rhythm had synchronized perfectly with his racing heart. They emerged suddenly into a clearing, dominated by a structure that defied explanation. A stepped pyramid, Smaller than those in Mexico or Guatemala, but unmistakably similar in design. Its stone surface was overgrown with vines and moss, but the architecture was intact, preserved by the jungle rather than destroyed by it. "My God," Samuel whispered. "This predates any known Amazonian civilization by thousands of years." The crystal pulled him forward, its light intensifying as they approached the pyramid. At its base, a doorway gaped black and uninviting, partially concealed by vegetation. Samuel hesitated at the threshold, professional excitement warring with paternal caution. "Eli, maybe you should wait." "No way." The boy's face was set with determination. "We stay together." Inside, the crystal's glow illuminated a narrow passageway leading downward. The walls were covered with murals, hunting scenes, astronomical charts, and depictions of beings that seemed neither fully human nor animal. "The Guardians," Samuel murmured, recognizing the serpent-human hybrid from the totem and medallion. The passage ended in a small chamber. At its center stood a stone pedestal with a crystal-shaped depression, a perfect fit for the shard in Samuel's hand. "It's a key," Eli realized. Samuel nodded. "Or a trap." The crystal pulsed urgently now, almost pulling itself toward the pedestal. Outside, they heard a sound that froze their blood, something large moving through the underbrush, approaching the pyramid. Multiple somethings, converging from different directions. Samuel met his son's eyes. "What do you think? Place it or run?" Eli swallowed hard but didn't hesitate. "Place it. We came this far." With a deep breath, Samuel positioned the crystal shard in its receptacle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then everything happened at once. Light erupted from the crystal, racing along hidden channels in the chamber walls like liquid fire. The pyramid rumbled, ancient stone grinding against stone as sections of the floor began to recede, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. Simultaneously, the entrance behind them sealed shut with a definitive boom. "Dad." Eli's voice wavered. "It's okay," Samuel assured him, though nothing about their situation warranted such confidence. "We've activated some kind of mechanism." From beyond the sealed entrance came sounds, scraping, shuffling, punctuated by something that might have been speech, but in no language Samuel recognized. Whatever had been tracking them had arrived. "Down," Samuel whispered, gesturing to the newly revealed staircase. "It's our only option." The crystal remained in its receptacle, illuminating the chamber with pulsating blue light. As they approached the staircase, Samuel noticed a small stone box near the pedestal, previously hidden in shadow. He grabbed it instinctively before following Eli downward. The staircase spiraled deep into the earth, each step worn smooth by centuries of use. The walls were lined with the same luminescent material that had activated in the rain, providing just enough light to see. Samuel counted the steps silently, 20, 50, 100, until they emerged into a vast underground chamber. "Whoa," Eli breathed. They stood on a stone platform overlooking an immense cavern. Below stretched what could only be described as a subterranean city, buildings carved directly from the bedrock, connected by bridges spanning underground streams. At the city's center rose a structure resembling a temple, its facade adorned with the now familiar serpent motif. "This is impossible," Samuel whispered. "A complete underground civilization, untouched for centuries." In the dim light, he examined the stone box he'd grabbed. It was intricately carved with minute hieroglyphs and sealed with a simple sliding mechanism. After photographing it from all angles, Samuel carefully opened it. Inside lay a metal disc roughly the size of his palm. One side was polished to mirror brightness. The other was engraved with a map of stars, a star chart unlike any Samuel had seen. "Astronomical navigation," he murmured, turning it in the light. "But these constellations—" "They're wrong," Eli finished, peering at the disc. "The patterns are different," Samuel nodded, mind racing. "Either this represents the sky from thousands of years ago, accounting for stellar drift, or it's not our sky at all. Eli suggested quietly. The implication hung between them, too fantastic to voice fully. Samuel returned the disc to its box, securing it in his pack. "We need to document everything," he said, professional instincts reasserting themselves. Photographs, measurements, samples if possible. They descended from the platform via a narrow staircase. The underground city was eerily preserved, showing none of the expected decay. No dust covered the surfaces, no debris littered the pathways. It was as if the inhabitants had simply stepped away moments before. "Where did they go?" Eli asked, running his hand along a perfectly smooth wall. "That's the question," Samuel replied. "This level of preservation suggests either recent habitation or what? Or conditions that prevent normal deterioration." They approached one of the smaller structures, its entrance a simple archway. Inside, they found what appeared to be living quarters, stone furniture, niches that might have held personal belongings, wall carvings depicting daily life. "These people weren't primitive," Samuel observed, photographing everything. "The architectural precision, the urban planning, this suggests a highly advanced society." Eli pointed to a carving, showing figures working with what appeared to be metal tools. They had technology, far beyond what should have existed in pre-Columbian Amazon. As they explored, Samuel noticed something disconcerting. The city was designed for beings smaller than modern humans. Doorways required ducking, furniture sat lower to the ground, tools depicted in carvings were proportioned for smaller hands. A different species. He wondered aloud. Or humans adapted to underground living, Eli suggested. At the city's center, they finally reached the temple structure. Unlike the practical buildings surrounding it, this edifice was ornate, covered in detailed carvings depicting what appeared to be a history or mythology of the city's inhabitants. One panel showed tall figures descending from the sky in fiery vessels. Another depicted these same figures teaching smaller, human-like beings various arts, agriculture, metallurgy, astronomy, writing, like the Anunnaki in Sumerian myths, Samuel murmured, or the Viracocha of Inca legends. The temple entrance was sealed by a circular stone door embedded with 9 gemstones arranged in the same pattern as the stars on the metal disc. "It's a lock," Eli said, excitement overcoming caution. "The star disc is the key." Before Samuel could respond, a noise echoed through the cavern, the same scraping, shuffling sounds they'd heard above, but closer now, multiple sources, converging on their position. "They've found another way down," Samuel whispered, instinctively pulling Eli behind him. In the dim blue light, shadows moved between the distant buildings, figures neither fully upright nor on all fours, moving with unsettling grace and purpose. The Guardians had found them. Samuel pulled the star disc from his pack with trembling hands. "Quick, it has to fit somehow." The shuffling sounds grew louder. In the dim blue light, they caught glimpses of the approaching figures, slender, fluid in movement, neither fully upright nor on all fours. Not human, but not animal either. Eli pointed to indentations around the circular door. "There! The disc must align with those marks." Samuel pressed the star disc against the central depression in the stone door. Nothing happened. He rotated it slightly, still nothing. "The constellations," Eli whispered urgently. "They have to align with the gemstones." Samuel rotated the disc carefully, matching the engraved star pattern to the embedded gems. When the final point aligned, the disc sank into the stone with a soft click. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the circular door began to recede, spiraling inward with a grinding rumble. Beyond lay darkness deeper than any they'd encountered. "Inside now," Samuel urged, pulling Eli through the narrowing gap as the first of the pursuers appeared at the edge of the temple. Plaza, graceful silhouettes with elongated limbs and heads that seemed too large for their bodies. The door sealed behind them with a decisive thud, plunging them into absolute darkness. Samuel fumbled for his flashlight, hands shaking. The beam revealed a small antechamber with a single altar at its center. Upon the altar lay a strange device, a metallic sphere approximately the size of a baseball, covered in intricate engravings and small crystalline protrusions. Most remarkable was its condition, unlike the ancient artifacts they'd found. This object gleamed as if newly forged, without a trace of tarnish or wear. "What is it?" Eli whispered, voice echoing slightly in the enclosed space. Before Samuel could answer, something struck the sealed door from outside, a heavy impact followed by scratching sounds. "The Guardians were trying to get in. We need to find another exit," Samuel said, scanning the walls with his flashlight beam. The chamber appeared to be a dead end, smooth walls without markings or doorways. Only the altar with its metallic sphere offered any point of interest. Another impact rattled the door, more forceful than before. Fine dust sifted down from the ceiling. "They're going to break through," Eli said, eyes wide with fear. With no other options, Samuel approached the altar. "This has to be important. Why else guard it so carefully?" The sphere rested in a shallow depression. Like the crystal shard before it, the object seemed to respond to proximity. The crystalline protrusions began to glow softly as Samuel's hand neared. "Dad, be careful," Eli warned. Samuel hesitated, then picked up the sphere. Immediately it warmed in his palm and the crystals brightened. The engravings, which he'd initially taken for decorative patterns, began to shift and reorient like the pieces of a puzzle box. A third impact hit the door, hard enough to crack the stone. Whatever waited outside was growing stronger or more numerous. "Samuel," came a voice. "Not Eli's, not human." Samuel nearly dropped the sphere in shock. The voice seemed to emanate from within his own mind, gentle but alien. "You hear that?" he asked Eli. The boy nodded wide-eyed. "It said your name." The sphere's glow intensified, casting the chamber in soft amber light. One section of wall began to shimmer like a heat mirage. "Passage," the voice whispered in their minds. "Safety." The wall was no longer solid. It had become transparent, revealing a corridor beyond. Another violent impact. The door cracked further, a thin sliver of blue light penetrating from outside. "Do we trust it?" Samuel asked, clutching the sphere. Eli glanced at the failing door. "Do we have a choice?" With the sphere clutched tightly, Samuel led the way through the shimmering wall. The sensation was bizarre, like walking through a waterfall without getting wet. The wall remained transparent, only where the sphere's light touched it. Once through, they found themselves in a long, straight tunnel that sloped gently upward. Unlike the ornate city, this passage was utilitarian. Smooth walls without decoration, floor worn by countless footsteps. "Where does it lead?" Eli wondered. "Up," Samuel replied simply, noticing the fresh air current. "Back to the surface, I think." The sphere pulsed rhythmically in his hand, guiding them forward with subtle variations in its glow. Behind them, a tremendous crash echoed through the tunnel. The door had finally given way. They moved as quickly as caution allowed, the sphere illuminating only a few yards ahead at a time. The tunnel curved and branched occasionally, but each time the sphere's light would brighten toward one path and dim toward others. "It's guiding us," Eli observed. "Or leading us somewhere specific," Samuel countered, unable to shake his skepticism despite the impossibility of what they were experiencing. After what seemed like hours of walking, the tunnel widened into a small chamber with a ladder carved into one wall, leading up to what appeared to be a trap door. The sphere's light focused on the ladder with unmistakable intent. "Samuel," the voice returned, clearer now. "Guardian comes one only." Others contained. Hurry! A chill ran down Samuel's spine. The voice, this intelligence, had somehow delayed their pursuers. But not all of them. From the tunnel behind them came a sound no human throat could produce, a harmonized vibration somewhere between a purr and a hum. A single guardian had followed their trail. "Up now!" Samuel urged, helping Eli onto the ladder. The trapdoor above was wooden, incongruous among the stone surroundings. Eli pushed against it as he climbed, finding it unlocked. Daylight streamed down as it opened. Samuel followed, the sphere clutched against his chest. Just as he reached the halfway point, a figure appeared at the chamber entrance. Tall, slender, with skin that seemed to shift between colors like a cuttlefish. its oversized eyes fixed directly on the sphere in Samuel's hand. "Return," it said both aloud and in their minds simultaneously. The single word carried layers of meaning: command, plea, warning. "Dad!" Eli called from above. "Hurry!" The Guardian moved with impossible speed, crossing half the chamber in a fluid bound. Samuel scrambled up the final rungs, emerging into blinding daylight. Together, father and son slammed the trapdoor shut. It sealed with a flash of light from the sphere, the wood suddenly appearing as solid and immovable as the surrounding stone. They found themselves in a small clearing, the jungle canopy forming a perfect circle overhead. The pyramid was nowhere in sight. "Where are we?" Eli gasped. Samuel checked his GPS unit. 2 miles from where we entered the pyramid. Impossible. The sphere in his hand grew suddenly hot. Its crystalline protrusions pulsed urgently, and the voice returned one final time. "Not yours to keep. Danger follows." The sphere cooled rapidly in Samuel's hand, its glow fading to a dull amber pulse. The crystalline protrusions retracted into the metal surface like closing eyes. "Not ours to keep," Samuel repeated. "But we can't just leave it here." Eli scanned the jungle around them. "That Guardian thing, it could find us again." Samuel carefully wrapped the sphere in his shirt and placed it in his backpack. "We need to get back to Mateo, back to the river." The GPS showed their location, but the jungle looked unfamiliar. Denser, older somehow, with massive trees, unlike those they'd passed on their approach. Consulting his compass, Samuel chose their direction. This way, they moved as quickly as possible through the undergrowth. The usual jungle sounds had returned: birds calling, insects buzzing, the occasional rustle of small animals. The silence of Terra Silenciosa seemed to have receded. "Dad, look," Eli said suddenly, pointing ahead. In a small clearing stood a weather-beaten wooden structure, a cabin, long abandoned. Vines wrapped around its support posts, and part of the roof had collapsed. But it was unmistakably man-made. "Someone else was here," Samuel murmured, approaching cautiously. The cabin's door hung loosely on rusted hinges. Inside was a single room, containing a rotted cot, a table, and rusting equipment that might have been scientific instruments. In one corner, a wooden chest sat padlocked and intact, protected from the elements by the remaining roof. "A research station," Eli suggested. Samuel nodded, examining the equipment. Mid-20th century, I'd guess. He tried the chest, locked tight despite decades of abandonment. "Can we open it?" Eli asked. Using his knife, Samuel pried at the rusted padlock until it snapped. Inside the chest lay several notebooks, remarkably preserved in sealed plastic bags, and a leather case containing something heavy. Samuel opened one notebook, recognizing the handwriting immediately. "Professor Marquez," he breathed. "These are his field journals. Your mentor was here?" Eli asked, eyes wide. "Decades ago. These must date from his early expeditions." Samuel quickly scanned the final entries. March 12th, 1974. The artifacts respond to human bioelectrical fields. The smaller items are merely tools, but the sphere is something else entirely. Perhaps a communication device. The Guardians protect it jealously. They are not malevolent, merely dedicated to their purpose. They want something in return for what they guard. March 15th, I've glimpsed the vault. The treasures are beyond imagining, but they are not meant for taking. They are payment, or perhaps a bribe. The legends were right. Some things should remain undisturbed. March 16th, they are coming for it. I cannot keep the sphere. I've observed enough to understand its danger. Whoever reads this, return it. The consequence of theft is pursuit without end. I leave this record and the translator in case others find their way here. The final entry was a hurried scrawl. They're outside now. I'm leaving through the tunnel beneath the cabin. Remember, the treasures are not abandoned. They are payment. Samuel looked up from the journal, a chill running down his spine. He found it too, the sphere. What's a translator? Eli asked. Samuel opened the leather case. Inside lay a device unlike anything he'd seen, a metallic headband with thin filaments extending from its surface and a small control panel on one side. An engraved plate read, Marquez Linguistic Interface Prototype. He built this, Samuel said in awe. To communicate with them, the Guardians. Samuel nodded, carefully examining the device. Marquez was a linguist before becoming an archaeologist. He specialized in untranslatable languages. The headband was ingeniously constructed, decades ahead of its time, a neural interface designed to translate brainwave patterns into comprehensible language. According to Marquez's notes, the Guardians communicated primarily through thought. Does it work? Eli asked. One way to find out. Samuel hesitated, then placed the headband over his temples. Nothing happened. Maybe it needs power, Eli suggested. A small panel on the side revealed a compartment for batteries, long since removed. Samuel rummaged through his pack and found spares for his camera that fit. With power restored, the headband hummed softly. Tiny lights flickered along its surface as it activated. Immediately, Samuel gasped, nearly dropping the device as a flood of whispers filled his mind. Distant, fragmented, but unmistakably alien. The voices overlapped, speaking in concepts rather than words. Intruder, taker, return, payment, balance, door, danger. Samuel ripped the headband off, breathing heavily. What happened? Eli asked, alarmed. They're all around us, Samuel whispered. Not physically, but their presence is everywhere in this region. Like a field of consciousness, he carefully packed both the headband and Marquez's journals. We need to keep moving. As they prepared to leave, Samuel noticed something scratched into the cabin wall, a crude map showing their current position relative to the river. Beneath it, Marquez had written 3 paths, fast, safe, or revealing. Choose wisely. The map showed 3 routes back to the river. One was direct but passed through difficult terrain. Another was longer, but avoided certain areas marked with warning symbols. The third led past a location marked with a star and the annotation, Vault Entrance, what they protect. Which way? Eli asked. Samuel studied the map, torn between scientific curiosity and growing unease. The sphere in his backpack seemed to pulse faintly, as if responding to his thoughts. The translator headband occasionally emitted soft static. We should take the safe path, he said finally. But the vault, Eli began, is exactly what got Marquez into trouble. Samuel met his son's eyes. We have enough to study already. Sometimes knowing when to stop is the wisest choice. As they left the cabin, neither noticed the slender shadow that detached itself from the tree line behind them, nor the soft humming that briefly filled the air, a sound that might have been satisfaction. The safe path proved anything but. By midday, they'd encountered quicksand, swarms of aggressive wasps, and a crossing where the ground had collapsed into a ravine too wide to jump. Samuel's choice was beginning to seem flawed. Maybe Marquez had a different definition of safe. Eli muttered as they backtracked yet again. They'd been walking for hours. Yet the GPS showed minimal progress toward the river. Samuel checked the battery, nearly depleted. The device had been draining unusually quickly since they'd left the pyramid. Technology doesn't work right here, he observed. The satellite phone, the GPS, it's like something's interfering. The Guardians, Eli suggested. Samuel nodded grimly. Or whatever power source they use. As they paused to drink from their dwindling water supply, a distant rumble shook the ground. Thunder, perhaps, though the sky visible through the canopy remained clear. The sound came again, rhythmic, deliberate. That's not natural, Samuel whispered. They altered course, moving cautiously toward the sound. The jungle thinned as they approached a massive rock formation, an outcropping that rose like an island above the canopy. Look, Eli pointed at a narrow path winding up the rock face. Someone made those steps. Indeed, crude stairs had been carved into the stone, ancient but still functional. They ascended slowly, the rumbling growing louder with each step. At the summit they found its source. A stone table occupied the center of a flat area, and upon it sat a cylindrical device unlike anything Samuel had ever seen. A copper-colored metal drum supported by 3 legs, with a crystalline dome on top. The drum rotated slowly, generating the rhythmic rumbling they'd heard. What is it? Eli asked, keeping his distance. I'm not sure, Samuel admitted, circling the device cautiously. "It's clearly mechanical, but I don't see any power source." The device was weathered, but functional, its metal surface etched with symbols similar to those they'd seen in the underground city. Most striking was its apparent age. The patina suggested centuries of exposure, yet it continued to operate flawlessly. "It's some kind of beacon," Samuel hypothesized, noticing how the crystal dome pulsed with each rotation. "Or a signal device. Who's it signaling to?" Eli asked. Before Samuel could answer, he noticed markings carved into the rock around the table, concentric circles with radial lines, forming what appeared to be a map centered on their current position. Smaller symbols marked specific locations. "It's a survey marker," Samuel realized. "This shows the entire Terra Silenciosa region." One symbol matched the location of the pyramid they'd entered. Another aligned with where they'd found the water basin. A third, the largest, sat at the center of the innermost circle. "That must be the vault Marquez mentioned," Samuel said, pointing to the central marker. "And these?" Eli asked, indicating dozens of smaller symbols scattered throughout the circles. "Guardians, maybe, or other artifacts." Samuel photographed the map carefully, then turned his attention back to the device. Its steady rotation seemed to accelerate slightly as he approached, the crystal dome brightening in response to his presence. "It knows we're here," Eli whispered, from his backpack. The sphere began to pulse in rhythm with the rotating drum. The translator headband emitted soft static that resolved into a single repeated concept: alignment, alignment, alignment. "They're connected," Samuel said. "This device, the sphere, they're part of the same system." As if in response, the crystal dome projected a beam of light upward into the sky, invisible in daylight. But Samuel suspected it would be prominent after dark. A beacon indeed, but signaling to what? The map's orientation suddenly made sense. "It's not just showing locations," Samuel said, excitement overriding caution. "It's a star map projected onto the Earth. The vault isn't just at the center geographically, it's directly below, something in the sky." "Like what? A star, a planet?" Samuel shook his head. "Or something else entirely." The headband's static grew more insistent. "Return, payment." Door closes. "Time's short." "We need to go," Samuel said abruptly, gathering his equipment. "Now, why? What's wrong?" "Marquez's journals, this map, the translator, they're all saying the same thing. The treasures are payment for something, and I think this device is counting down to when payment is due, as if confirming his theory." The drum's rotation noticeably accelerated, its rumbling deepening in pitch. "Payment to who?" Eli asked, as they hurried back to the stone steps. Samuel gestured skyward. "To whatever that beacon is signaling." They descended quickly, the translator continuing its urgent message. At the base of the rock formation, Samuel checked their GPS again, still barely functional, but it indicated the river lay 5 miles west. "If we push hard, we can reach it before nightfall," he said. "Then what?" Samuel had no answer. Getting back to the river was only their first challenge. The greater one loomed behind them, and perhaps above them. As they moved away from the outcropping, neither noticed the small drone-like object that detached from the rotating beacon, hovering briefly before following their path through the canopy. The size of a hummingbird and silent as a shadow, it tracked their every move with eyes that glowed the same copper color as the beacon. The Guardians had upgraded their surveillance, and this time technology, not biology, was their hunter. Night fell before they reached the river. Forced to make camp in a small clearing, Samuel rigged a basic shelter using their remaining tarp. Neither mentioned what preyed on their minds, that something was following them. "One more day," Samuel assured Eli, though his confidence was performance rather than conviction. "We'll reach Mateo tomorrow and head downstream." Eli nodded, exhaustion evident in the shadows beneath his eyes. The boy had shown remarkable resilience throughout their ordeal, but even the strongest spirits had limits. They ate the last of their protein bars in silence. When Eli finally drifted into fitful sleep, Samuel retrieved Marquez's journals from his pack, reading by flashlight. The professor's final entries grew increasingly paranoid or increasingly aware. He described the Guardians not as jungle creatures, but as sentinels created specifically to protect the artifacts. Most disturbing were his references to the arrival and the exchange, events he believed occurred cyclically when the beacon aligned with a specific celestial position. The treasures are not archaeological prizes, Marquez had written, but technological components disguised to appear primitive. The underground city served as an embassy for beings from elsewhere, and the vault contains their payment, resources unique to Earth that they require. Samuel closed the journal, mind reeling. The implication was too fantastic, yet it explained the technological sophistication of artifacts supposedly created thousands of years before modern civilization. A soft buzzing drew his attention upward. Something hovered at the edge of his flashlight beam, a metallic object approximately the size of a hummingbird, with wings that moved too precisely to be biological. Its eyes glowed copper in the darkness, a drone. Not modern, but something far more advanced despite its apparently ancient construction. The Guardians had evolved their surveillance methods. Samuel switched off his flashlight. The drone remained visible by its own subtle illumination, hovering for several seconds before darting away into the darkness. He wouldn't sleep tonight. Dawn broke misty and oppressive. As they prepared to continue their journey, Samuel noticed something peculiar about a tree at the edge of their clearing. A section of bark that seemed too uniform, too deliberately placed. Approaching cautiously, he found a small door had been fashioned into the trunk, perfectly camouflaged. It swung open at his touch, revealing a hollow space containing a single object, a black stone cube approximately 3 inches on each side. "Eli, look at this." The boy joined him, eyeing the cube warily. "Is it another artifact?" "I think so." Samuel removed it carefully. Unlike the other artifacts, the cube was utterly non-reflective, absorbing light rather than returning it. No markings adorned its perfectly smooth surface. "It feels weird," Eli said as Samuel allowed him to hold it briefly. "Like it's pulling at me." Samuel had felt it too, a subtle attraction not unlike gravity, as if the cube possessed its own field of influence. More remarkable was its temperature, cool despite the jungle heat, as if impervious to its environment. The translator, Samuel remembered, retrieving the headband from his pack, the moment he placed it on his temples. The whispers returned, but focus now centered on the cube. Key, vault, exchange. Final component, it's connected to the vault, Samuel relayed. "I think it's some kind of access key. Who left it here?" Eli asked the obvious question. Samuel had no answer, though the possibilities disturbed him. Either the Guardians wanted them to find it, or someone, or something else, was monitoring their journey. He wrapped the cube in cloth and secured it in his pack alongside the sphere, which had begun pulsing more rapidly since the cube's discovery. The artifacts were clearly responding to each other. They resumed their trek toward the river, moving faster now that desperation outweighed caution. The jungle seemed to conspire against them. Vines snagged their ankles, insects swarmed more aggressively, and twice they encountered snakes that refused to yield the path. By midday, they heard the blessed sound of running water. The river lay just beyond the next ridge. "Almost there," Samuel encouraged as they climbed. At the crest they froze. Below them stretched the river, but their boat was gone, and Mateo was nowhere to be seen. In the muddy bank, strange footprints surrounded the spot where they'd hidden the vessel. "He left us," Eli whispered, devastation in his voice. "No," Samuel said, pointing to the footprints. "These aren't human. The Guardians found the boat, so we're trapped." Samuel assessed their situation grimly. With no boat, they faced a grueling trek downstream through some of the most inhospitable jungle on Earth. Their supplies were nearly exhausted, and at least one Guardian drone knew their location. The translator hummed with renewed intensity. "Return, vault, exchange, survival. Not trapped." Samuel said finally. "But I think our destination has changed." "What do you mean?" He pointed back toward the interior of Terra Silenciosa. "The artifacts want to be returned. The cube is a key to the vault. I think we're meant to complete what Marquez couldn't." "You want to go back?" Eli asked incredulously. Samuel checked his watch, a simple mechanical timepiece, unaffected by whatever disrupted their electronics. "The beacon's rotation is accelerating. I believe it's counting down to something, and we don't want to be in this jungle when that countdown ends." From the dense foliage behind them came the soft hum of the Guardian drone. No longer bothering to conceal its presence, we're being herded, Samuel realized. "Back to the vault." Eli squared his shoulders with surprising determination. "Then let's go there on our terms, not theirs." Samuel nodded, pride momentarily overriding fear. The vault, it would be, not for treasure now, but for answers, and hopefully for a way home. They moved with renewed purpose, following the star map Samuel had photographed at the beacon site. The central marker, the vault, lay 2 days' journey from their current position, assuming they maintained a steady pace through increasingly difficult terrain. By nightfall, they'd covered 8 miles, guided by the strange black cube. When held freely, it consistently oriented toward the vault, like a compass pointing north. Samuel had tied it to a string, creating a makeshift pathfinder that led them unerringly through the maze of vegetation. They made camp beside a small stream, the water safe enough after treatment, with their few remaining purification tablets. Eli collapsed immediately into exhausted sleep while Samuel kept watch, the translator headband beside him emitting occasional bursts of static. Shortly after midnight, Samuel noticed the jungle canopy above them beginning to glow with a faint blue luminescence. The light pulsed rhythmically, traveling in waves from the direction of the beacon toward the center of Terra Silenciosa. "The exchange approaches," came a voice, not from the headband, but from directly behind him. Samuel whirled, nearly crying out in alarm. At the edge of their small camp stood a figure unlike any he'd seen before, humanoid but clearly not human. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, its slender body seemed to shift colors like a cuttlefish, blending with the surrounding foliage. Its oversized head housed enormous eyes that reflected the blue light from above. A guardian. Not pursuing but confronting, Samuel reached for the headband with trembling hands, placing it on his temples. Not enemy. Messenger. "Time short. What do you want?" Samuel whispered, careful not to wake Eli. The Guardian made a fluid gesture toward Samuel's pack, where the sphere and cube rested. "Return. Complete circuit. Exchange must proceed. The exchange. What is it?" Samuel asked. "What happens?" The Guardian's skin rippled with patterns that the headband translated as complex concepts rather than simple words. "Others come. Trade agreed. Millennium cycle." Samuel struggled to understand. "Others from where? Space? Another dimension?" The Guardian made another gesture, upward then around, encompassing everything. "Beyond. Watchers. Benefactors and harvesters? And the treasures in the vault? What are they for?" The Guardian approached, moving with unsettling grace. From a pouch-like fold in its skin, it produced an object and extended it towards Samuel. A flat, oval device with a crystalline surface. "See truth. Understand exchange." Samuel hesitated, then accepted the device. The moment it touched his palm, the crystal surface activated, projecting a 3-dimensional image into the air between them. A detailed hologram of Earth surrounded by unfamiliar spacecraft. The image shifted, showing the underground city in its prime, inhabited not by humans, but by beings like the Guardian before him. Then came new arrivals, tall, luminous entities that descended from the sky. The hologram depicted an exchange, the visitors receiving containers of materials from Earth, leaving behind objects of advanced technology. The scene repeated across different time periods: ancient Egypt, medieval Europe, pre-Columbian America, always hidden from mainstream human civilization. always involving similar exchanges. They've been coming here for thousands of years, Samuel whispered in awe. Trading technology for what do they take? The hologram focused on the containers being loaded onto the visitor's craft, filled with plants, minerals, water samples, and small life forms found nowhere else in the cosmos. Biological diversity, unique compounds, raw materials unavailable elsewhere. And the Guardians? What are you? The hologram showed the Guardian species being created, genetically engineered by the visitors to protect the exchange sites and manage the collection of Earth materials between visits. We serve, we protect, we prepare, and the vault contains what they're coming to collect, Samuel realized. When? The Guardian pointed to the pulsing light above. 3 days. Beacon calls. We must deliver. What happens if the exchange doesn't occur? Samuel asked, dreading the answer. The hologram displayed a final scene, the visitors arriving to find their payment missing. Their response was immediate and devastating. Not global destruction, but targeted elimination of the area and all knowledge of it. A precise excision of the evidence. Balance maintained. Or consequences? The Guardian reached for the oval device, which Samuel returned reluctantly. The hologram vanished, leaving only the blue-tinted darkness. You want us to help complete the exchange, Samuel said, understanding dawning. That's why you led us to the artifacts, why you didn't kill us when you could have. Helpers, unexpected but useful. Must reach vault, and after the exchange, will you let us go? The Guardian's skin rippled with what might have been uncertainty, if balance restored. Freedom possible. With that ambiguous promise, the Guardian retreated into the jungle, its form blending perfectly with the vegetation until it vanished from sight. The blue pulsing light continued overhead, counting down to an event beyond human understanding. Samuel removed the headband, mind reeling from the implications. They weren't just archaeology explorers anymore. They'd become unwitting participants in something that had been occurring since before recorded history. Beside him, Eli stirred, eyes opening to the glowing canopy above. "Dad? What's happening?" Samuel took a deep breath. "I think I finally understand what we've discovered, and why we can't keep it." Dawn brought clearer perspective and renewed urgency. As Samuel explained the Guardian's visitation to a wide-eyed Eli, the blue pulsing light overhead intensified with daylight. "So we're not just finding treasure," Eli said, processing the revelation. "We're part of some kind of alien trade deal." "Something like that," Samuel admitted. "Though alien might not be the right word. These beings have been interacting with Earth longer than human civilization has existed. They broke camp quickly, following the Black Cube's persistent pull toward the vault. The jungle had changed overnight. Plants leaned toward their path rather than blocking it. Vines withdrew from their feet. And even the insects seemed to avoid them now. "They're helping us," Eli noted, as a thorny bush visibly retracted its branches to let them pass. "Or controlling our journey," Samuel countered, his academic skepticism still fighting against the impossible reality they faced. By midday, they reached a river crossing where no natural ford existed. As they considered their options, the water level began to drop before their eyes. Stones rising from the riverbed to create stepping stones. "Definitely helping us," Eli said, cautiously testing the first stone. They crossed safely, the river returning to its normal flow once they reached the opposite bank. Samuel checked their position against the star map photograph. They were making excellent progress, perhaps too good to be natural. "Time is a factor," Samuel reminded his son. "Whatever's happening, it has a deadline." As they rested briefly in a small clearing, something glinted in the undergrowth nearby, a metallic object partially buried in the soil. Samuel excavated it carefully. It was a bracelet-like device made of an unfamiliar silvery metal, sized for a human wrist, despite its clearly non-human design. 6 gemstone-like nodes adorned its outer surface, each a different color. "Another artifact?" Eli asked. Samuel slipped the translator headband on briefly. "Protection. Safe passage. Visitor gift. "I think it's meant for us," Samuel said, removing the headband. "A tool of some kind?" Eli reached for it eagerly. "Can I try it?" Samuel hesitated, then handed it over. Carefully, the boy slipped the bracelet over his wrist. It adjusted automatically, contracting to fit him perfectly. The moment it settled against his skin, all 6 nodes illuminated. "It feels warm," Eli reported. "Not uncomfortable, just present." Samuel watched anxiously for any negative effects, but Eli seemed fine. Better than fine, actually. The fatigue that had shadowed his features all morning had lifted, and his posture straightened with renewed energy. "I feel good," the boy said, surprised. "Really good. Like I just had a full night's sleep and a big breakfast." Samuel examined the bracelet more closely without removing it. "Some kind of medical device, maybe? Or a personal shield?" As if in response, one of the nodes pulsed brightly. A second later, a falling branch, which would have struck Eli's shoulder, deflected in mid-air, landing harmlessly several feet away. "Whoa!" Eli exclaimed. "Did you see that?" Samuel nodded, astonished. "Definitely a protection device. Can we find another one for you?" Eli asked, already scanning the ground. "I think it was left specifically for you," Samuel replied. "The Guardians seem to be investing in our success." They continued their journey with renewed confidence. Eli's bracelet activated several more times throughout the afternoon, deflecting thorns, warning of a camouflaged pit trap, even purifying water from a stagnant pool when Eli dipped his hand into it. By evening, they'd covered nearly 15 miles, an impossible distance under normal jungle conditions. The blue pulsation overhead had intensified further, now visible even through the dense canopy. The black cube pulled more insistently toward their destination, requiring Samuel to store it in his pack to prevent it from jerking the string from his grasp. They made camp beside a strange rock formation, perfectly cubic boulders stacked in what appeared to be a deliberate arrangement. As darkness fell, Eli's bracelet projected a dome of faintly visible energy around their camp. "A force field?" the boy whispered in awe. "Like in the movies." Samuel smiled despite their circumstances. Even facing the unknown, his son's capacity for wonder remained intact. That night, as Eli slept peacefully within the bracelet's protection, Samuel reviewed their situation. The translator headband had gone silent, as if the Guardians had said all they needed to say. The sphere in his pack pulsed in perfect synchronization with the lights overhead, growing warmer by the hour. Something was building toward culmination. Their path now seemed unavoidable. They would reach the vault tomorrow, return the artifacts, and hope the Guardians honored their implied promise of safe passage afterward. Samuel's scientific mind still struggled with the implications. An advanced civilization trading with Earth for millennia, hidden from mainstream human awareness. Guardians created specifically to protect the exchange. Technology disguised as primitive artifacts. Everything he'd theorized about an advanced pre-Columbian Amazon civilization had been both right and wrong. The evidence existed, but its origin and meaning were far different than he'd imagined. A soft hum announced the return of the Guardian drone, hovering just outside the energy dome, its copper eyes fixed on Samuel with unnerving intelligence. "We'll complete your mission," Samuel told it quietly. "But afterward, my son goes free. Whatever happens to me." The drone hovered silently for a moment, then flashed its eyes once before departing. Whether in agreement or simply acknowledgement, Samuel couldn't tell. He looked down at Eli, peaceful in the glow of alien technology that responded to him as if designed for his protection. Perhaps it had been. Perhaps nothing about their discovery of Terra Silenciosa had been accidental. Tomorrow would bring answers, or consequences. Samuel only hoped he hadn't led his son into something from which neither would return. Morning revealed a transformed landscape. The jungle had receded overnight, giving way to a vast circular clearing nearly a mile across. At its center, rising from the earth like the exposed vertebra of a buried giant, stood a structure unlike anything Samuel had ever seen. a spiraling tower of iridescent stone that caught the morning light and fractured it into prismatic beams. "The vault," Samuel whispered, awestruck. The black cube in his pack vibrated so intensely it threatened to tear through the fabric. The sphere pulsed in rhythm with the blue light that now filled the sky completely, no longer merely filtering through the canopy. "Is that where we're supposed to go?" Eli asked, his bracelet glowing in response to the structure. Samuel nodded, words temporarily failing him. Nothing in his archaeological training had prepared him for this moment, standing before architecture that defied human engineering capabilities, yet had apparently existed in the Amazon basin for thousands of years. They approached cautiously. The ground beneath their feet changed from soil to a smooth, resilient surface that resembled polished stone, but felt slightly yielding, like the deck of a ship. Patterns appeared beneath their steps, illuminating briefly before fading, as if the ground itself was tracking their movements. Halfway to the tower, they encountered a ring of objects rising from the surface, 7 pedestals arranged in a perfect circle, each supporting a different artifact. 6 were empty. The 7th held a small, weathered wooden box. Samuel approached the box cautiously. Unlike the other artifacts they'd encountered, this one appeared entirely ordinary. Hand-carved wood with simple iron hinges, the kind of container that might hold jewelry or small keepsakes. "Should we open it?" Eli asked, staying close to his father's side. The translator headband had fallen silent, offering no guidance. Samuel carefully lifted the box from its pedestal. It was surprisingly heavy for its size, as if the wood contained something much denser than its appearance suggested. When he opened the lid, both gasped in surprise. Inside lay a simple bronze key, unmistakably human in design, perhaps a century old at most. Beneath it was a yellowed photograph of a man standing beside a young boy, both smiling at the camera. The man was Professor Marquez, looking decades younger than when Samuel had known him. "Your mentor," Eli said, recognizing him from Samuel's stories. Samuel turned over the photograph. On the back, written in faded ink, "The key opens more than doors. The guardians keep their bargains. I couldn't complete the exchange, but perhaps you will. Trust them, Samuel. They've been watching you since you were my student." "He knew," Samuel breathed. "He knew I would come here. How could he know that?" Samuel had no answer, but the implications were staggering. Had Marquez been working with the guardians all along? Had Samuel's entire academic career, including his disgrace, been manipulated to bring him to this moment? He pocketed the key and photograph, unsettled by questions he couldn't answer. They continued toward the spiraling tower, which seemed to shimmer and shift as they approached, its dimensions somehow inconsistent with normal perspective. At its base stood a door, not grandiose or ornate, but a simple bronze door sized for human use, incongruous against the alien architecture surrounding it. A keyhole waited at its center. "The key," Eli said unnecessarily. Samuel hesitated, his hand closing around the bronze key in his pocket. This was the threshold beyond which there would be no return to the comfortable certainties of his previous life. Whatever lay beyond would forever change how he understood human history and humanity's place in the cosmos. "We came this far," Eli said quietly. "We should finish it." Samuel nodded, pride momentarily overwhelming his apprehension. His son, barely 12 years old, showing more courage than many adults he'd known. As he inserted the key, the black cube and sphere in his pack vibrated in unison. The key turned easily, the door swinging open silently despite its apparent age and weight. Beyond lay a chamber that defied explanation, larger inside than the tower appeared from without, its walls covered in displays that showed real-time images from across Terra Silenciosa. At the chamber's center stood a pedestal supporting a glowing crystalline matrix, approximately the size of a beach ball. Its interior shifting with colors and patterns too complex to comprehend. 6 alcoves lined the walls, each shaped to hold a specific artifact. Samuel recognized the indentations, one for the sphere, one for the cube, One for the star disk, one for the headband, one for a device they hadn't yet encountered, and one for Eli's bracelet. They want all of them, Samuel realized aloud. Everything we found, including my bracelet, Eli asked, touching it protectively. Before Samuel could respond, the crystalline matrix pulsed, projecting a holographic image into the center of the chamber, a three-dimensional star map showing Earth's position relative to distant systems. One star pulsed in rhythm with the matrix, a line extending from it toward Earth's location. The message was unmistakable. Something was coming. Soon, a voice spoke, not from the translator headband, but directly into their minds, clear and distinct. Samuel Grant, we have been waiting for you to complete the circuit. Place the artifacts in their receptacles. The exchange must proceed. Samuel stood frozen, the voice still resonating in his mind, neither male nor female, neither young nor old, yet somehow familiar. Who are you? He finally managed. The crystalline matrix pulsed. We are the Overseers. We maintain the exchange network across 17 worlds. Your planet's unique biological diversity is essential to our ecosystem preservation efforts. You're conservationists? Samuel asked, struggling to reconcile this explanation with his fears. Preservationists, the voice corrected. Earth contains genetic sequences and compounds found nowhere else in our surveyed systems. We trade technology for biological samples. The arrangement has benefited both our civilizations for 7,000 of your years. Eli stepped forward, natural curiosity overcoming caution. If you're so advanced, why do you need humans to help? Why all the secrecy? The matrix shifted, displaying images of human history, war, environmental destruction, exploitation. Direct intervention has proven problematic. Guardians maintain our exchange sites, but completing the circuit requires human participation, a symbolic partnership. As for secrecy, your species has demonstrated hostility toward that which it does not understand. Samuel couldn't argue with that assessment. And Professor Marquez? What was his role? Observer and potential circuit completer. He located many artifacts but failed to assemble the full collection within the exchange window. Before departing, he nominated you as his successor. This confirmation of Marquez's involvement should have been validating, but instead left Samuel feeling manipulated. His entire career trajectory, even his academic disgrace, now seemed suspiciously convenient in driving him to this remote location with his son. You influence my life, he accused. My research, my reputation, we observe. We occasionally create opportunity. We do not control, the voice replied. Your choices remained your own. Your colleague Reyes acted from human motivations, jealousy, ambition. Your decision to bring your son was unforeseen but fortuitous. Fortuitous. Samuel echoed, anger rising. You've put a child in danger! The boy was essential. Certain artifacts respond only to uncorrupted neural patterns. Adult human minds are too rigid. Eli glanced at his bracelet, understanding dawning. That's why this chose me. Samuel stepped protectively in front of his son. What happens if we refuse to complete your circuit? The matrix dimmed momentarily. The approaching vessel contains entities that have traveled great distances expecting payment. Disappointment would be regrettable. Previous failures have necessitated localized reality adjustments. Meaning what exactly? The removal of approximately 30 square kilometers of space-time, along with all matter and memory contained within. Samuel felt the blood drain from his face. You destroy this entire region? Including us. Not destruction, excision, as if it never existed. Eli tugged at Samuel's sleeve. Dad, I think we should do what they want. Before Samuel could respond, the floor beneath them shimmered. A section rose to form a table-like surface, upon which materialized a clear container holding what appeared to be soil samples, plant specimens, and small vials of water, all neatly labeled and catalogued. Your standard payment component is prepared, the voice explained. Add your blood samples to complete the collection. Our blood? Samuel backed away, pulling Eli with him. That wasn't mentioned. A small amount only. Your DNA contains markers of interest. From the table emerged a device resembling a medical injector, but far more elegant in design. It hovered in the air, waiting. That's crossing a line, Samuel stated firmly. We'll return your artifacts, but we're not giving you our blood. The matrix pulsed more rapidly, its colors shifting toward red. The exchange requires biological samples from circuit completers. This has been the arrangement for 7 millennia. Find another arrangement, Samuel said, backing toward the door. The injector device followed them, persistent but not aggressive. The voice continued, now tinged with what might have been concern. The vessel approaches. Cycle completion cannot be delayed. Alternative compensation would require significant value equivalent. Samuel's mind raced. Such as? Information. Knowledge unique to your perspective. My research? Archaeological data? Insufficient. We require something of equal biological value. Samuel realized with horror what they wanted, his life's work, not as an archaeologist but as a father. His memories of Eli's childhood, his hopes for his son's future, the genetic legacy he represented. Before he could respond, Eli stepped forward and extended his arm toward the injector device. Take mine, the boy said firmly. Just a small amount, right? Then we can go home. Eli, no! Samuel moved to intervene, but the device had already pressed against his son's skin. A brief flash of light, a soft hum, and it withdrew, a tiny vial of blood now filled within its transparent chamber. Sample accepted, the voice confirmed. Circuit completion may now proceed. The injector device returned to the table, depositing the blood sample among the other specimens. The container sealed itself and sank back into the floor, presumably secured for the approaching exchange. Eli turned to his father, rubbing his arm where a small red dot marked the extraction point. It didn't even hurt, he assured him. Samuel pulled his son into a fierce hug, emotions overwhelming him, relief, fear, pride, and a deep, unsettling sense that they'd crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The matrix's colors stabilized, returning to their previous harmonious pattern. Complete the circuit, the voice instructed. Place the artifacts in their designated receptacles. Samuel reluctantly retrieved the sphere and cube from his pack. The star disk had remained in the temple where they'd left it, but the headband was still with them. That left one empty alcove. We're missing one, he pointed out. The matrix pulsed once. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a small pedestal upon which rested a delicate crown-like device constructed of the same iridescent material as the tower itself. Thin filaments extended from its circumference, waving gently as if alive. The final component, the voice explained. A neural interface. Once activated, it will complete the exchange. Samuel approached the pedestal cautiously. Unlike the other artifacts, this one inspired immediate dread, not from its appearance, but from an instinctive understanding of its purpose. Who wears it? He asked, though he already knew the answer. The one who initiated the blood covenant, the voice replied. The boy. Absolutely not, Samuel stated, placing himself between Eli and the crown. I won't let you put that thing on my son. The matrix pulsed, colors shifting toward deeper blues. The interface is harmless. It creates a temporary connection to the exchange network. Then I'll wear it, Samuel countered. Incompatible neural patterns. The boy's mind retains necessary plasticity. Eli stepped around his father. What exactly will it do to me? The matrix projected images, previous exchanges spanning millennia, each showing a young human wearing the crown while surrounded by artifacts. The participants appeared unharmed, many even expressing wonder or joy during the process. You will briefly connect with the consciousness of those approaching. You will experience their gratitude. You will understand the purpose of the exchange more completely. Then it will end. Samuel remained unconvinced. And afterward? What happens to us? You will be compensated and released. Compensated how? The matrix pulsed. A compartment in the wall slid open, revealing a small obsidian chest. It floated across the chamber, stopping before them and opening itself. Inside lay a rectangular object approximately the size of a smartphone, but constructed of materials unlike anything on Earth. Its surface shimmered with iridescent patterns that shifted continually. Responding to their gaze, the knowledge device, the voice explained. It contains information your civilization would require approximately 300 years to discover independently. Medical procedures, sustainable energy generation, cellular regeneration techniques. A fair exchange for your assistance. Samuel stared at the device, torn between scientific excitement and parental caution. You've offered this to humans before. To each circuit completer, their subsequent contributions often significantly advance their societies, though few understood the true source of their insights. Images appeared in the Matrix, Leonardo da Vinci sketching machines centuries ahead of his time, Nikola Tesla contemplating wireless energy transmission, indigenous healers discovering medical compounds through inexplicable insights, each apparently influenced by information from the knowledge device. So that's how human progress really works? Samuel asked, staggered by the implication. Periodic interventions disguised as genius? We accelerate. We do not replace natural development. The device reveals only what your minds are prepared to comprehend. The blue pulsation outside intensified, visible even within the chamber. The matrix responded with increased activity, patterns flowing more rapidly through its crystalline structure. The exchange window narrows, the voice warned. You must decide. Samuel looked at his son, seeing both fear and determination in his eyes. Eli, this has to be your choice. I can't make it for you. The boy glanced at the crown, then at the knowledge device, finally returning to meet his father's gaze. If I don't do it, what happens to all those other worlds? The ones they're trying to preserve? That's not your responsibility, Samuel insisted. But we're here, Eli replied simply. And we can help. Before Samuel could respond, the matrix emitted a high-pitched tone. The holographic star map showed the approaching vessel entering Earth's atmosphere, invisible to conventional detection, but clearly tracked by the exchange network. Final opportunity, the voice stated. Place the artifacts and complete the circuit, or the exchange fails. With trembling hands, Samuel placed the sphere, cube, and headband in their respective alcoves. Each activated upon contact, glowing with internal light that connected to the central matrix through visible energy strands. Eli removed his bracelet, the protective field around him dissipating as it disconnected from his wrist. He placed it in its alcove, completing 5 of the 6 connections. Only the crown remained. Samuel took a deep breath. One condition, he told the voice. I stay with my son throughout the process. If anything seems wrong, I remove the crown immediately. Acceptable, the voice confirmed. Samuel turned to Eli, kneeling to meet him at eye level. You're the bravest person I've ever known. If you feel anything that scares you or hurts, tell me right away. Eli nodded, swallowing hard. I'm ready. Samuel lifted the crown carefully. The filaments, extending from its circumference, responded to proximity, reaching gently toward Eli's head like curious tentacles. As Samuel lowered it, the filaments delicately threaded themselves through the boy's hair, finding contact points across his scalp. The moment the crown settled in place, Eli gasped, not in pain but in apparent wonder. His eyes widened, pupils dilating as they reflected impossible vistas. Dad, he whispered, I can see them. The final energy strand connected to the matrix, completing the circuit. The chamber filled with light as all 6 artifacts activated fully, channeling power toward the crystalline structure at the center. Outside, the blue pulsation reached its peak intensity, bathing Terra Silenciosa in ethereal radiance. Through it all, Samuel held his son's hands tightly, watching for any sign of distress. But Eli's expression remained one of amazement, his eyes tracking sights invisible to his father. They're beautiful, the boy murmured. They're grateful. They're singing. A tremor ran through the chamber, not violent but like the gentle vibration of a tuning fork. The matrix's patterns accelerated to blinding speed, then suddenly stabilized into a new configuration, and in the center of the holographic display, a shape began to form, a visual representation of the consciousness now connecting with Eli through the crown. The entity that had traveled across stars for Earth's biological treasures. The being whose purpose they were helping to fulfill. The exchange had begun. The being that materialized in the holographic display defied human categories, neither humanoid nor animal, neither solid nor gaseous, but something in between all states of matter. Its form shifted continuously, prismatic colors flowing through patterns that seemed at once random and perfectly ordered. Though alien beyond comprehension, it somehow conveyed a sense of ancient wisdom and gentle purpose. Eli stared transfixed, tears streaming down his cheeks, not from fear or pain, but from overwhelming beauty. "They're saying thank you," he whispered. "They're showing me their world. Worlds. So many worlds." Samuel held his son's hands tightly, torn between protective fear and scientific wonder. The crown on Eli's head pulsed with energy that matched the matrix's rhythm, filaments gently undulating against his scalp. Through the chamber walls, Samuel could see the jungle outside transformed, plants growing with impossible speed, flowers blooming and withering in seconds, an accelerated cycle of life playing out across Terra Silenciosa. The exchange wasn't just about physical specimens. It was about capturing the essence of Earth's biological processes. "The cycle completes," the voice announced. As the matrix reached maximum luminosity, beam of concentrated light shot upward from the tower, piercing the atmosphere, visible confirmation of the exchange transmission. Simultaneously, the biological samples container rose from the floor, glowed briefly and vanished. The holographic entity expanded, filling the chamber with its presence. It extended a tendril of light directly toward Eli. The boy didn't flinch, instead raising his own hand in response. When the light touched his fingertips, he smiled with profound understanding. "Dad," he said softly, "they want to give us something. A gift beyond the knowledge device." Before Samuel could respond, the entity's form contracted into a tight sphere of pure energy, then expanded outward in a silent explosion that passed through them like a warm wind. As it did, an object materialized in the air between them, a crystal pendant suspended on a chain of unknown metal. It floated toward them, settling gently into Samuel's palm. Unlike any crystal on Earth, it contained what appeared to be a miniature galaxy. Stars and nebulae swirling within its depths, an impossible cosmos captured in solid form. "What is it?" Samuel asked, voice barely above a whisper. "A remembrance," the voice explained as the crown gently detached itself from Eli's head. "And a key." The boy blinked, readjusting to normal perception as the neural connection faded. "A key to what?" "To us. Should you ever need to establish contact again." The matrix began powering down, its patterns slowing as the exchange completed. The artifacts in their alcoves dimmed, their purpose fulfilled. Outside, the blue pulsation faded from the sky, returning to normal daylight. "The exchange is complete," the voice announced. "You may take the knowledge device and remembrance key. The other artifacts must remain to prepare for the next cycle." Samuel clutched the crystal pendant, feeling a faint warmth pulsing within it like a heartbeat. "How do we get home?" "The Guardians will guide you. The network's gratitude extends beyond compensation. Your safe return is assured." As if on cue, the bronze door swung open. Outside stood a guardian, not the intimidating pursuers they'd evaded, but a guide waiting patiently to escort them. Samuel collected the knowledge device, its surface still shifting with iridescent patterns. As they moved toward the exit, he turned back to the dimming matrix. "Will we remember this, or will you erase it from our minds?" "Memory remains your choice," the voice replied, fading with the matrix's power. "The knowledge device includes selective memory stabilization functions. You decide what your world is ready to learn." Shilai took his father's hand as they stepped outside. The guardian led them away from the tower, which was already beginning to sink back into the earth, the jungle reclaiming the clearing with extraordinary speed. "Did we do the right thing?" Eli asked, as they followed their escort through the rapidly transforming landscape. Samuel looked at his son, no longer the uncertain boy who'd begun this journey, but someone who had glimpsed wonders beyond human comprehension and found courage to face them. "I think we did," he answered honestly. "We helped preserve something important, not just for Earth, but for life across the stars." The guardian led them to a path that hadn't existed before, a clear route through the jungle that headed directly toward the river. As they walked, Samuel noticed other guardians keeping pace at a distance, ensuring their safe passage out of Terra Silenciosa. By sunset, they reached the riverbank to find Matteo waiting anxiously beside their boat, exactly where they'd left it days before. "Though it seemed impossible, gracias a Dios," the guide exclaimed, embracing them both. "3 days I wait. I think the jungle take you." Samuel exchanged a meaningful look with Eli. 3 days, exactly as the guardians had said. The exchange had completed on schedule. "We got a little lost," Samuel explained, the understatement of his life. "But we found our way back." As Matteo prepared the boat, Eli fingered the crystal pendant now hanging around Samuel's neck. "Are we going to tell people what really happened?" Samuel considered the knowledge device secured in his pack, containing medical breakthroughs, clean energy solutions, and countless other advances humanity desperately needed. And the pendant, their direct line to beings who had been quietly guiding human progress for millennia. Not everything, he decided. Not yet. The world isn't ready for the whole truth, but we'll use what they gave us to help people. Samuel nodded, resting his hand on his son's shoulder. "Carefully, responsibly. That's our part of the exchange now." As they pushed off from shore, the jungle behind them seemed to shimmer briefly, a final acknowledgement from forces beyond human understanding. The guardians had withdrawn, their purpose fulfilled until the next cycle. Samuel thought about the academic vindication awaiting him. He could publish enough verifiable discoveries to restore his reputation without revealing their true source. He thought about the knowledge device and how it would transform their lives. Most of all, he thought about the 12-year-old boy sitting across from him, who had shown more courage and wisdom than most adults he'd known. Whatever wonders they'd discovered in Terra Silenciosa, none compared to the bond they'd forged together. That was the true treasure, worth far more than $12 million. The boat rounded a bend in the river, leaving the silent land behind. But the crystal pendant pulsed gently against Samuel's chest, a reminder that some connections once made never truly break, and somewhere among the stars, grateful beings carried a small vial of his son's blood, a covenant between worlds that would endure long after they were gone. Through the chamber walls, Samuel could see the jungle outside transformed, plants growing with impossible speed, flowers blooming and withering in seconds, an accelerated cycle of life playing out across Terra Silenciosa. The exchange wasn't just about physical specimens. It was about capturing the essence of Earth's biological processes. "The cycle complete," the voice announced. As the matrix reached maximum luminosity, a beam of concentrated light shot upward from the tower, piercing the atmosphere, visible confirmation of the exchange transmission. Simultaneously, the biological samples container rose from the floor, glowed briefly and vanished. The holographic entity expanded, filling the chamber with its presence. It extended a tendril of light directly toward Eli. The boy didn't flinch, instead raising his own hand in response. When the light touched his fingertips, he smiled with profound understanding. "Dad," he said softly, "they want to give us something. A gift beyond the knowledge device." Before Samuel could respond, the entity's form contracted into a tight sphere of pure energy, then expanded outward in a silent explosion that passed through them like a warm wind. As it did, an object materialized in the air between them, a crystal pendant suspended on a chain of unknown metal. It floated toward them, settling gently into Samuel's palm. Unlike any crystal on Earth, it contained what appeared to be a miniature galaxy. Stars and nebulae swirling within its depths, an impossible cosmos captured in solid form. "What is it?" Samuel asked, voice barely above a whisper. "A remembrance," the voice explained as the crown gently detached itself from Eli's head. "And a key." The boy blinked, readjusting to normal perception as the neural connection faded. "A key to what?" "To us. Should you ever need to establish contact again." The matrix began powering down, its patterns slowing as the exchange completed. The artifacts in their alcoves dimmed, their purpose fulfilled. Outside, the blue pulsation faded from the sky, returning to normal daylight. "The exchange is complete," the voice announced. "You may take the knowledge device and remembrance key. The other artifacts must remain to prepare for the next cycle." Samuel clutched the crystal pendant, feeling a faint warmth pulsing within it like a heartbeat. "How do we get home?" "The Guardians will guide you. The network's gratitude extends beyond compensation. Your safe return is assured." As if on cue, the bronze door swung open. Outside stood a guardian, not the intimidating pursuers they'd evaded, but a guide waiting patiently to escort them. Samuel collected the knowledge device, its surface still shifting with iridescent patterns. As they moved toward the exit, he turned back to the dimming matrix. "Will we remember this, or will you erase it from our minds?" "Memory remains your choice," the voice replied, fading with the matrix's power. The knowledge device includes selective memory stabilization functions. You decide what your world is ready to learn. Eli took his father's hand as they stepped outside. The Guardian led them away from the tower, which was already beginning to sink back into the earth, the jungle reclaiming the clearing with extraordinary speed. "Did we do the right thing?" Eli asked, as they followed their escort through the rapidly transforming landscape. Samuel looked at his son, no longer the uncertain boy who'd begun this journey, but someone who had glimpsed wonders beyond human comprehension and found courage to face them. "I think we did," he answered honestly. "We helped preserve something important, not just for Earth, but for life across the stars." The Guardian led them to a path that hadn't existed before, a clear route through the jungle that headed directly toward the river. As they walked, Samuel noticed other Guardians keeping pace at a distance, ensuring their safe passage out of Terra Silenciosa. By sunset, they reached the riverbank to find Matteo waiting anxiously beside their boat, exactly where they'd left it days before. "Though it seemed impossible, gracias a Dios," the guide exclaimed, embracing them both. "3 days I wait. I think the jungle take you." Samuel exchanged a meaningful look with Eli. 3 days, exactly as the Guardians had said. The exchange had completed on schedule. "We got a little lost," Samuel explained, the understatement of his life. "But we found our way back." As Matteo prepared the boat, Eli fingered the crystal pendant now hanging around Samuel's neck. "Are we going to tell people what really happened?" Samuel considered the knowledge device secured in his pack, containing medical breakthroughs, clean energy solutions, and countless other advances humanity desperately needed. And the pendant, their direct line to beings who had been quietly guiding human progress for millennia. Not everything, he decided. Not yet. The world isn't ready for the whole truth, but we'll use what they gave us to help people. Samuel nodded, resting his hand on his son's shoulder. "Carefully, responsibly. That's our part of the exchange now." As they pushed off from shore, the jungle behind them seemed to shimmer briefly, a final acknowledgement from forces beyond human understanding. The Guardians had withdrawn, their purpose fulfilled until the next cycle. Samuel thought about the academic vindication awaiting him. He could publish enough verifiable discoveries to restore his reputation without revealing their true source. He thought about the knowledge device and how it would transform their lives. Most of all, he thought about the 12-year-old boy sitting across from him, who had shown more courage and wisdom than most adults he'd known. Whatever wonders they'd discovered in Terra Silenciosa, none compared to the bond they'd forged together. That was the true treasure, worth far more than $12 million. The boat rounded a bend in the river, leaving the silent land behind. But the crystal pendant pulsed gently against Samuel's chest, a reminder that some connections once made never truly break, and somewhere among the stars, grateful beings carried a small vial of his son's blood, a covenant between worlds that would endure long after they were gone.